Good evening. Now, I strongly suggest that you get out something to write, because the conversations that is about to take place will be full of teachable moments. These two men need no introduction because of their influence that go beyond measure. But let me take a bit of a moment to talk a little bit about Bishop T.D. Jakes. Yeah, you know the man. More than 40 years ago, with limited resources, he and his wife, Sarita, founded the Potter's House, and today their church reaches and teaches millions around the world. In addition, Jakes aims to take compassion to the hurting with his books, movies, TV shows, appearances, and other forms of media. He has become a giant for Christ. Now, Pastor A.R. Bernard is the founder. He's the founding pastor of this great house of worship, Christian Culture Center, better known as CCC. Started 45 years ago in a Williamsburg storefront along with his wife, Pastor Karen, both leaving comfortable careers, and the result of all their hard work and sacrifices is this mighty church community. Books, radio shows, outreach programs, and then some. CCC is now the largest house of worship in New York City. Look at what God has done. So it is my honor, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome to the stage our precious jewels, Bishop T.D. Jakes and A.R. Bernard. Come on, let's welcome these giants.
You may be seated. Bishop and I were doing an interview, media interview just before the beginning of this event, and they asked me how I felt about tonight's meeting. I said, this is the clash of the titans. This is two giants coming together and sitting down and making history. And I really believe that. I feel that way. I've known Bishop Jakes for more than 30 years, and we've shared platforms again and again and again. But this is his first time in this house, in my house. And we've both come a long way and journeyed and continue to journey and to make our mark. So tonight's conversation will definitely promote that book that you need to get hold of, but also talk about the issues of our day, how we see them, how we experience them, and that intersection of faith and culture that we all must navigate. So thank you for thinking it important enough to come this way, be with us tonight. Thank you, B.B. Winans. Thank you, Israel. Thank you for your time. And wasn't Avery fantastic? Wasn't she a gem? Thank all of our staff who made this happen. And those of you who are joining us across the country, as far as Indonesia, in the United Kingdom, we welcome you to this conversation tonight. And I believe the first of many conversations to come, because we need these kind of conversations from individuals who have done it, experienced it, learned from it, and are willing to share. Isn't it wonderful? That book, how long did it take him to write that book? All of his life. How long did it take him to prepare for his next sermon? All of his life. And you get 40 to 50 years of life experience in one book. How much of a blessing is that? Amen. Are you ready for our conversation? Lord, bless us. Because if you bless us, we are truly blessed. Thank you for tonight's conversation. Thank you for the bishop. Give us your wisdom. Fill our mouths with words that will feed your people. Empower them to have conversations of consequence right there on the front line where they live, work, and play as ambassadors for Jesus Christ. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So, Bishop, you and I were talking, and I've got to. We're also grateful for our families because our families have played such an important role in supporting our journey. And we would not be the men we are today and where we are today if it wasn't for the support of our family. See, when God called us, it actually becomes a calling for our entire family. So any of my family that are here, and I see some of y'all, and Bishop Jake's family, I just have to say that. We appreciate them very much, the sacrifices that they make. I mentioned to you before coming up, I said, you and I have got to tackle that because Avery came back from Ghana, African, proud of her blackness. And in this, especially in America, it seems like for people of color to be proud of their ethnicity, their cultural context, their experience, somehow goes against the grain of Christianity, of them being a Christian. Like we can't and shouldn't celebrate that because it makes us look, to some people, even racist or racial. Someone asked me, people of color tend to be very racial. I said, we had to be. And the person who said it was white. He said, why? I said, because of you. And I had to unpack that to help him appreciate that. And he said, I get it. I'm privileged not to have to think, walk, and live in an awareness of my racial identity. But you do. And he said, and I apologize for that. And we need more of those conversations.
Absolutely.
But Jesus was unapologetic about his Jewishness, made his own people his first order of ministry business. He said he will go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel first. With his conversation with the woman at the well, he's very clear in the exchange there because she was a Samaritan and he was a Jew, and he didn't apologize. He did not correct her in any way. The Syrophoenician woman who came for healing, and he said that healing is the children's bread, speaking about the Jewish people. So he was very, very clearly identified with his ethnicity, his Jewishness, but understood that his work in ministry went far beyond his own people. Right. Is that okay for us?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for coming. I would have been embarrassed if you hadn't. I think the convergence of who we are ethnically and who we are theologically is a very complicated web to untangle. My sister was talking about being in Accra, and I've been there several times. I had the privilege of going to the castles in Elmina to see where the slaves first set sail. And it is a gruesome, disturbing, troubling sight to see. The body fluids are still in the castle. You can smell the body fluids of the slaves in spite of the fact that the back doors are open and the wind is blowing through for hundreds of years. It has never been able to wash away the smell of the debauchery and the degradation that our ancestors went through waiting for the next ship to arrive. The convergence of this atrocity occurs beneath a church. So on one hand, upstairs, the master's having church, and downstairs, the slaves are having pain, rape, abuse, stacked like sardines, one window in the place, feces, urine, menstrual cycles all mixing together in a trough until it has concretized across the floor even to this day. And upstairs, they're singing hymns. Anytime your missionaries are also your masters, it's going to affect the conversions of my identity versus my faith, because there was no investment in correlating my faith and my ethnicity, because my ethnicity was attempted to be slaughtered on the ship. Stripped of language, stripped of culture, stripped of name, stripped of identity. We were not encouraged to embrace our ethnicity along with our faith. Instead, we adopted a faith, not to negate the fact that blacks had a presence in the Old Testament down through history, but the primary preponderance of the crowd began to adopt a faith against the atrocities of slavery and to the exclusion of even carrying our last name. Mm-hmm. So when you start talking about identity and the struggle that we have continued to have in this country and on that continent in regard to identity, they clearly understand who they are and what tribes they descended from and their ancestry. They did not lose that, but they lost a lot of other things through colonialism. We lost a lot. My last name is Jakes. Jakes is German, clearly. Clearly, I'm not German, so every time you call me by who owned me. And I can't find my name. It is a very difficult transition then to understand that whatever gleanings of fragments of identity and celebration that we extract from life, we extract it through the quagmire of the history that brought us to where we are in life. Mm-hmm. I'm not so sure that it's important whether white people understand it or not. I would prefer that they did. I think it's part of the tapestry of this great country to admit its own fallacies. However, if they choose not to embrace it, what is most important is that I understand within myself who I am as an individual.
So is whiteness and blackness a color, or is it a social construct? And I say that because, in our community, you're black, but if you act too white, you can lose your black card.
Right.
And it's true in white community.
Right.
If you're white and you're acting too black, you can lose your white card.
Or worship with blacks.
So, it's a social construct. I'm answering my own question. It's a social construct to perpetuate class and a myth of white superiority versus black inferiority. Mm-hmm. And cloaked in religious belief that for us did not begin with the transatlantic slave trade.
Right.
Because Augustine, Origen, Cyprian,
right.
These are great names,
right.
Church fathers who wrote the theological foundation for all of European Christianity.
Absolutely.
And they were black Africans.
And actually got the gospel before Europeans did.
Absolutely.
So if anything, Christianity could be the white man's religion when we helped write the book. So, however, like many things, it got hijacked along the way. And instead of just passing on your Christ, you pass on your culture. And I think we have forever been in a position of trying to get them to accept things that they created, like the AME Church. You know, you're being racist because you have African Methodist Episcopal. You're being racist because you have black this and black that and the other. Well, with the reason we had AME churches is because we were not allowed to sit down amongst you, and we had to sit in the balcony and finally had to have our own. So a lot of the things that we have constructed for social identity has only been a result of the fact that we were exiled and not allowed to participate in the mainstream of America, and we survived the best way we could in spite of it. That isn't said to produce guilt or to say that white people are bad and black people are good, because you can't categorize people by skin, but it is just the fact that this thing happened from which we are still recovering. And as we recover from the trauma, we understand that Jews are recovering from the Holocaust. We don't seem to give the same credence and weight to hundreds of years of slavery. And even we amongst ourselves sometimes don't give ourselves a break that some of the issues that we're dealing with today are the leftovers of slavery. My great-grandmother was a slave, and I remember her. I remember her in life. I remember her in death. I went to her funeral, and she was born a slave, died a free woman. I only bring that up to say we're not that far as people would like for us to believe. That I can reach back and smell the sweet potato pie and the coal stove that she had on her back porch and fried chicken on cast iron skillets. Those are my childhood memories, cooked by a woman who was a slave. So that's not that long ago. The speeding of time makes us think that history was a lot further back than it was.
They say that over time, history becomes legend and legend becomes myth, unless we keep the memory of it alive.
Which is hard to do in a time when opinion has cannibalized truth. And the current contemporary situation that we're living in today, your opinion about a thing has become exalted above facts. So it's not about facts, it's about feeling. That's not how I feel about it. You're gonna make me feel guilty. You're gonna make me feel bad. I feel bad. So if I feel bad, I rewrite facts to accommodate feelings, which means that the facts have been cannibalized by the feelings or the truth by an opinion.
Isn't that where we are prophetically? I'm thinking
Absolutely.
about Isaiah 59, where it says, truth has fallen in the street. Justice has turned backwards. Therefore, equity cannot enter. Bloodshed is the result. We have had more mass shootings in our nation. America is identified with violence and aggression and a hostility that's not just coming from black folks or white folks, but it's a mixture of everybody. There is this anger and resentment inside of us, and we look to scapegoat it by identifying someone that we can transfer that to or take it out on. Where do we go? How does our Christian faith respond to that?
Well, I wrote in my book that anger has become the currency of the culture. You really have nothing to work with. Everybody's angry. Everybody's a victim. Everybody's ostracized. You can't post anything on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram that doesn't get some vitriol from it. So there's a great deal of anger. Then there's a great deal of depression. And the real definition of depression is anger turned inside. So anger that's not displayed in the ways that you're talking about, in overt ways, it expresses itself in covert ways, coming out in illnesses, sicknesses, depression, suicide, despair, insomnia, eating disorders, all of the ways that we express what we can't release. There has never been a time in the history of this world that the church was more needed than it is right now.
Yeah. Because we provide what?
We provide hope in the midst of despair. We provide direction in the absence of, see, we've lost Big Mama. We don't have Big Mama anymore. And if we do, she has Alzheimer's. Okay, but there used to be a day that Big Mama would hold the house together. Big Mama would say, go home to that man. He's a good man, girl. She worked things out. We don't have Big Mama anymore. We don't have fathers in the house like we used to. So everybody's going for themselves. Women have had to survive a lot of atrocities and developed an independence that says, I'm going on with or without you. Men feel abandoned, and they have separated into living a lifestyle that does not allow the woman to feel safe enough to trust in her or him in her. And so all of this is done to the deterioration of society, because society begins with family. It's the first culture that you're born into. It's where you learn anger management. It's where you learn to forgive. It's where you learn how to articulate emotions, feelings, and passions. When we lose that and all we do is plug up something and charge it up for our kids to play with, then they think that relationships work like computers. So when they go out in the real world and try to have relationships, if the marriage doesn't work in a month, they quit. If they're not treated right on the job, they walk away, because they expect you to respond in predictable ways, and people do not respond in predictable ways, and they haven't learned how to resolve conflict because they didn't live in the house with two people who were going at it and had to forgive each other and still had to go to work and still had to pay bills and still had to do business. They don't have people skills. They're really great at technical skills. They don't have people skills.
And relationships is the network for life.
It's everything. It's family, it's business. Business is about relationships. Your net worth is affected by your own attitude. Your attitude determining your altitude. If you are not good with people, it's going to have a direct or indirect effect on the currency you're able to accumulate. So it does matter how you treat people. It does matter.
You were successful in a book because now you talk about family. Woman, Thou Art Loose, that whole thing. You spoke to the pain of women, what they experienced it. But family means Father's house. I shared with my congregation, I was up in Albany having an opportunity to address elected officials who were gathered at the Black and Latino Caucus. Went back to my hotel room after the morning service, and I'm flipping through looking for documentaries, and there's a documentary on Bill Cosby. I watched for the 20 minutes that actually 30 minutes before I started having trouble with the connection. And Bishop, I was taken back because I saw people who knew him personally. I saw people who were abused by him. I saw people who knew him only because of the industry that he was in and they were in. And I saw people who were removed from him. But they all had an opinion of him with anger, with resentment, with hostility. And I'm thinking to myself, why is it that people who don't even know this man have this kind of hostility and resentment towards him? Is it what he did, or is it bigger than that? I have to say, it's because of what he symbolized. He symbolized father. The family program, the Huxtables, black success, because he was black professionals, took us to another level of perception from the American public. And it was that which he symbolized that was shattered and left people angry because they needed that symbol. They needed it to be true, to be real. And that spoke not just for our community, because there were whites, blacks, Latinos on the program, but it spoke to a whole nation that seemed to be suffering from a father wound. And you know, we call our elected leaders, especially at the level of president, the father of the country. What kind of fathers have we had over this nation?
Ask Sally Hemings.
This is being recorded, by the way, Bishop.
You know, the founding fathers of this great country were innovative, creative, and massively progressive to develop the currency of democracy amidst the cascading winds of other monarchies and other ideologies. Having said that, we must not confuse talent with temperance. When you start looking at a Bill Cosby, when you start looking at the fathers of this great nation, the fact that you have talent doesn't mean that you have temperance. And so we are so in love with talent that we forget that talented people are human. And when we find out that they are human like us, we murder them, stabbing at the failures in ourselves. Because it is easier to castigate somebody that you admired rather than to admit that in some ways you don't just relate to Dr. Huxtable, but you also relate to Bill. And when we learn to correct our mistakes, handle them with truth, but then forgive the perpetrator, then we come just a little bit closer to forgiving ourselves. Because we are all neither good, or all bad. We are some convergence of both. And when somebody's badness becomes pronounced to us, understand that we are the people who were brought out to watch the lynchings. And so the whole word picnic comes from that background, where we turned a festival into a killing. And that residue still stays with us today, that we like to come out and watch the conviction, the murder, the destruction, the denigration, and then go back to our shanties and talk about it. We're still doing that today.
Yeah.
We're still doing that today. And what we have to do, in the process of restoring other people, you get restored. In the process of forgiving other people, you find forgiveness. In the process of confronting other people, you confront yourself. And I think that so many times it is easier to say evil looks like that, so you won't think it looks like this.
And when you fail to forgive, you actually yoke yourself
Yes,
to that person's sin against you.
absolutely.
And whatever you're yoked to in life, you carry the burden of.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to
No,
jump.
I'm just saying, you can carry the burden of that sin against you while that person's gone on
Absolutely.
to live their life,
Absolutely.
leaving you in the prison of unforgiveness.
Oh, you're preaching. You're preaching. I find one of our greatest strengths, the beautiful singing that we heard tonight, absolutely amazing. It's the soulful way that we sing. The soulish way that we have sung for years has been therapy, has been medicine, has been the conduit through which we have been able to release the overwhelming feelings that have come both through our oppressions and our giftings have mixed together and cohabitated to present a sound of soulful singing unlike any other people in the world. Amen. The same thing that makes us very talented also retards our growth. Because while feelings coming out in a song is a powerful thing, but feelings coming out in a decision can be dangerous. We make decisions from a place of emotions, whereas other people make decisions based on facts and their agenda and what they're trying to get done. And what I talk about in the book when I start talking about disruptive thinking, sometimes in order to get where you're trying to go, you have to align with somebody that you don't even need to agree with, but they can help you get to where you're trying to go.
Hold on right there. Hold that right there.
Come on, talk to me.
We're going to get to that chapter. But before we get to that chapter, let me pull out my notes.
Uh-oh.
3 recordings, 11 films, 37 written works, partnership with Wells Fargo, Amazon, Rock Nation. I thought you were a pastor. Explain all this to me.
The problem starts when somebody describes you by how they met you. Because the truth of the matter, on June 9th, 1957, when my mother's legs was in stirrups, she did not push out a pastor, she pushed out a person.
Come on, now you're preaching.
You understand? And so I did not do it from a place of how you met me as a pastor. I did what I did. I built what I built. I wrote what I wrote. I accomplished what I accomplished, not just because I'm a preacher, but because I was first a person. That person is a black person, and we have shared experiences, but that person is also engaged into a world full of Australians and Canadians and Caucasians and Europeans and so how do I come into the world understanding who I am, but also having the ability to blend into a society that is not necessarily homogeneous to my history? Okay, as we grapple with these ideologies, you come to a point in your life where you begin to understand who you are, but more importantly, how do I fit in the world? And here's my point. If we don't learn how to make decisions from other places other than feelings, we will always be handcuffed to the pain and the trauma of the past. Do you hear what I'm saying? Because your trauma is not just in your past, it's driving the decisions of your future.
Yeah.
Who you eat with, who you marry, who you sleep with, where you go, what you go after. I don't like her, I can't work that job, I walked away. And I think about Hagar, since I'm talking to a preacher.
Come on.
I've been talking to business people all week, so I could use the other half of my brain.
Be refreshed. Come on.
Hagar runs away from Sarah's house because she can't get along with Sarah. Part of it was really Hagar's own doing that created the animosity that existed with Sarah. And she runs out into the wilderness to die, and God says, I have provided for you back with your mistress, Sarai. The fact that you don't like her doesn't mean she doesn't have your food.
Come on, come on.
The moment,
I got a sip now.
yeah, the moment that Hagar humbles herself to the point that recognizes that God might feed you through somebody you don't like, she was able to save her son from dying once she recognized that provision is not always amongst your friends. So other people know that. That's why they have contracts, so that they can do deals with people that they don't trust. Okay? But we are so distrustful of everybody that we rule out people who are not like us because they don't look like us, and we rule out us because we don't trust us. So we end up with 96% of black businesses are sole proprietorships with less than 2 employees because we're still hustling and we can't bring anybody else into the deal. We want to own 100% of a quarter rather than 50% of a million.
But you know what happened, Bishop, and you and I'm formerly a banker 10 years, coming out of the corporate world into ministry, and then discovering that it was okay to be corporate as a pastor.
Right.
And engaging in business. Too often our people will sit on the other side of the table, look across, and decide some arbitrary reason why they don't like the person on the other side of the table who was about to cut a major deal with them.
Right.
And they walk away from that table. They walk away from that deal because they just don't like them.
Either they don't like them or they're afraid. We have such peer pressure in our community that you can lose your black card so easily that sometimes we keep the card and lose the money. We keep the card and lose the husband. We keep the card and lose the job. We keep the card and lose the position. This is what you have to realize, and I know you do. I shared this the other night. My mother and father, we had a 2-bedroom house with 5 people in it as a little boy. I grew up in that house. When my mother started working, we were able to turn the attic into a bedroom, and my brother and sister and I were able to divide by gender into 2 different sizes of a very hot attic with no air conditioning in it. I don't know what they were thinking. They call it child abuse today, but that's how. What I learned is I tried to sneak upstairs after going down to the kitchen when I shouldn't, which is how I ended up like this. What I learned as I walked up the steps, the step you step onto walking up the steps is never the step that creaks. It's the step you step away from that creaks. When you try to lift your weight up off of the step you used to be on, so that you can step up to the step you're going to be on, the step you left always squeaks. In that same sense, when people see you moving up, it's not where you're moving up that creates the most noise. It's where you step from that makes the most noise. And sometimes, rather than to go through the noise of the discontentment of the step you left, accusing you of changing, we stay to make other people comfortable. So we must become autonomous enough to be grown people and make decisions, try to make sure that they're integrous and they're right, and you vetted them and you're thorough and you're sure. But you cannot walk out there and ask all of America or all of Black America or all millennials or all baby boomers or all preachers or all churches, do you agree? Because if you have to wait for everybody to agree, you'll never get anything done. Yeah. That's why the Bible said if 2 or 3 agree. If you can get 2 or 3 to agree as touching anything on earth, it shall be done. He didn't say 200 or 300 because that's a much harder deal to get 200 or 300 to come together in agreement. And some of us are so needy and we need so much to be loved and to be accepted and nobody say anything bad about us that we've retarded our growth to make other people feel comfortable. My sister said we have set ourselves on fire.
Keep other people warm.
To keep other people warm. Yeah. And it takes courage to be a disruptor. It takes courage to be a leader. It takes courage to be the first Black anything. It takes courage because the person who goes first gets all the briars, gets all the bushes, gets all the controversy, gets all the attack, gets all the suffering. You know when you're going to be separated the most, celebrated the most, is when you're dead. We like our heroes dead. Once they are dead, they become larger than life. They become perfect. They become amazing. They become wonderful. They become special. They become elite. They become honorable. They become flawless. They become spotless. They become relevant. They become creative. Oh, if we could only have Martin back again. When we had Martin, we gave him hell. We gave him absolute hell. We barred him from churches. We didn't let him in vineyard. I'm not talking about what the white people did. I'm talking about what the black people did.
That's right.
We called him names. We insulted him. We argued against him. And then when he was dead, now he's amazing. He's a godfather of the Black community all over the world. My problem is, if you spend your life trying to get everybody to like you, we'll never see another Dr. King. We'll never see another Nelson Mandela. We'll never see another Fannie Lou Hamer. You'll never see them as long as you need everybody's consensus before you move to the next dimension. You have to have the ability to be a disruptive thinker, that's where it starts, but to go on to be a disruptive doer and face the ridicule of people not understanding why you left the step you were on to step on the next step to become who you're going to be. I want to tell you something. I bet you there's not a person in this room that doesn't have at least 5 different things you couldn't be doing and being and producing and doing entrepreneurship and real estate and development and investment, but you end up becoming a prisoner to a title. So you are loyal to what they call you, whether it's preacher, whether it's accountant, whether it's bookkeeper. You never considered the fact that the company that gave you the title is going to give you a gold watch and send you home on a pension, and you never develop your own brand nor mind all the fruit that's in you. I didn't know I could be a film producer. I didn't know that I could produce cinematic productions. I didn't know that I could do what I'm doing with real estate. I didn't know that what I could do with books and writing books and selling books and reaching the world. I didn't know that I'd be brought into the White House to settle disputes and arguments and give advice about situations. And so I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know that. My childhood does not reflect my adulthood. My history doesn't look like my destiny. My father had me scrubbing floors on the janitorial service with Brillo pads at 10 years old over in a corner, scrubbing out the corners where the Brillo pads didn't reach. I did not look like I was on a trajectory to be who I am. But it doesn't matter where you start, it only matters where you finish.
So you know what you're doing, right? You are reinterpreting. You're applying a new hermeneutic to the words of Jesus when he said, "Occupy till I come."
Yes. Come on.
What does it mean?
Translate it. Translate
I feel mischievous right now.
Translate it. Come on, I'm right
What
with
does it mean, Bishop, to occupy?
The translation of occupy till I come is do business till I come. Jesus expected us to do business. There's more scriptures about agriculture, doing business, 5 talents, 2 talents, 1 talent. And there is about many things that we overemphasize have the least amount of scriptures, and the things that have the most scriptures we underemphasize. Jesus didn't say, "I come that you might have church." He said, "I come that you might have life and have that life more abundantly." It does not offend God for you to have abundant life. It does not offend God because the first commandment that he gives us is be fruitful. You cannot be fruitful if you're not seedful. So the first command is predicated on the inventory he knew he had placed within you. If he had not put the seeds of greatness in you, he could not then turn around and command you and say, be fruitful, because you can't be fruitful where there is no seed.
So this is why the master was so angry with the man with 1 talent.
Right.
Because he was unwilling to take risk.
Yes.
To invest.
And because he hid what he should have exposed and exposed what he should have hid.
Come on, man. Come on. So it was saying that when we bury our gift, talents, and abilities, we're not occupying.
Right, we're not occupying until he comes. And to all the gifted people out here, which is everybody, this is one of the things that I learned. One of the problems with gifted people and artistic people and creatives is that they are so busy creating, they don't do the business. If you're gonna take a note, take this one. Do the business before the creative. Because if you make the film, but you don't have a supplier, you don't have a producer, you don't have a deal, you've put all of that creativity into something that has nothing to nest in. If you do the business before you pour in the creative, the business will accommodate the creative. So leaving them with talents or whatever the talents might have been, whether they were seed or finances or what have you, they have to create an environment for that thing to flourish. When God says be fruitful, it is only because he understands what he has put in you that is seedful. So when we pray for trees, God answers with acorns. We step on the acorn trying to get, when is my tree coming? Because we don't appreciate seed form. Every idea in this room is a seed. Every creative concept in this room is a seed. It needs to be in the soil that is fertilized by a business construct that not only incubates the talent, but protects it from predators. So if you don't have a business acumen around your talent, you could sing yourself to death and die poor.
So I'm talented, I'm creative, but I just am not business. That's not what I do. So what's my next step?
Hire it.
Come on.
Hire it. Hire it. Hire your weaknesses. Always hire your weaknesses. Never hire your strengths. If you hire your strengths, they compete with you. If you hire your weaknesses, they complete you.
Come on.
So it's very, very important. That's why you don't see a good executive board with all lawyers or all accountants or all bookkeepers or all nurses. A good executive board is strengthened by its diversity. You don't want everybody in there thinking like a lawyer. You want somebody thinking from public relations.
Yeah.
You want somebody thinking from accounting perspective. You don't want everybody in there old. We need some people that are young. We need some people that are black. We need some people that are white, that are brown. It is a statistical fact that corporations that are the most diverse experience 20 to 30% increase on income on the bottom line just through adding real diversity. Because the net we have to throw now isn't a net that is just a communal net just for you and people who look like you. It has to be a net that is broad enough to reach and accelerate itself and multiply throughout cultures, nations, kingdoms. We're not trying to take communities, we're trying to take kingdoms. We're trying to take kingdoms. The whole notion is that the kingdoms of this world shall become the kingdoms of our God and of his Christ. And in order to take kingdoms, we have to stop being angry and stop being hurt and stop being the victim and stop looking at our emotions as if they're driving the car. Let them ride in the car, but don't let them have the wheel of the car, because they won't make decisions that you need to hear.
So let them scream at you from the back seat.
Right. Let them scream
Leave
at
them
you
in the
from
back seat.
Leave them in the back seat. Don't let your emotions have the wheel. You'll kill somebody and then cry because they're dead. You'll destroy somebody that you really love. You'll walk away from somebody you really need, because our emotions fluctuate. Whatever you're feeling right now, it's not going to last. So you can't let something that won't last lead.
Navigating the intersection of faith and culture.
Yes.
Come out from among them, be ye separate, saith the Lord.
Yes.
Touch not the unclean thing.
Yes.
And then, but go into all the world and preach the gospel
Yes.
to every creature.
Yes.
How do we reconcile those two things?
I think it's important that we have boundaries. I was talking to Charlie Scharf, the CEO from Wells Fargo, and he said something about culture that I'd never heard before. When he's talking about culture, he's talking about culture inside a corporation. He says the culture inside of a corporation is defined by the behavior you will not allow. Whatever your bottom line is, it says, we're not taking this, that establishes your culture. The lower you drop that, the worse the culture gets. When you raise up a standard, and so I can touch not the unclean thing and still affect the culture. God doesn't mind us affecting the culture, he minds the culture affecting us. Okay, so if I'm the salt of the earth, I can't stay in the shaker, come out from among them and be ye separated. The idea of isolation destroys the whole reason that I'm the salt of the earth. Neither do men light a candle and hide it up under a bushel. What God has done in my life is not meant to be held or hidden, nor is it meant to be contained and locked up in the church. Because the church is supposed to be a city set up on a hill that cannot be hid, a light unto the world. So these undercover Christian agencies that we have, where these secret spies for Jesus that we have, these people who love Jesus and only speak it at church, are counterproductive to the integrity. You know what is a good faith-based business? Not one that plays gospel music, one that keeps their word. I don't care what kind of music you play. Your witness is that you provide good service. Your witness is that you do a good job. Your witness is that my rugs are clean. If you're shampooing the rugs, that's your witness. I don't care about the music. Play all the music until your fingers fall off. But if your checks bounce and you don't pay on time, and I didn't get what I ordered, and the products aren't delivered, and the quality is not there, you can't call yourself a faith-based Christian just because you play gospel music, no more than just because you stand in a garage makes you a car.
So naming it Jehovah Auto Body is not enough.
The worst deals I've ever gotten into were deals where we prayed first.
Uh-oh.
It is so traumatic to me that whenever we start a business meeting, they say, let's pray first, I tighten up. I go right into this.
I think I cut you off, but the key word, boundaries.
Boundaries.
Boundaries define us, boundaries identify us, boundaries protect us.
Absolutely.
We have to have boundaries as we navigate that intersection of faith and culture, and not allow the culture to inform us.
Right.
But to allow the kingdom in us to inform the culture.
I believe that the best way forward, what got us here in my parents' generation, I'm a child of the civil rights movement. My parents' generation was the civil rights movement. What got us here, I'm not sure is going to take us there. What got us here was marching, drawing attention, being advocacy. I appreciate it. I thank God for it. It did a lot. It did a whole lot. Because I remember when things were not as good as they are now. Having said that, I'm not sure that we can, in this climate, totally depend on elected officials to change the problems that exist in our community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It worked, it helped, it made a difference. But where we are now, there's so much fighting for power that there's nobody fighting for us. And so nothing gets solved, nothing gets moved forward. It just gets pushed down the can so we can blame the other person so that we can score points. We have to get to the point that we care more about policies than we do politics. Okay, whoever's got the best idea, I'm with you. Okay, whoever's going to protect this country and protect this world, I'm with you. I do not pledge allegiance to a party too fast because it creates a dilemma. One party thinks they can't get us, the other party thinks they can't lose us, and neither one works for us. I know I'm going to get in trouble for that, but I'm out here now. I might as well go with it.
That's disruptive. Come on.
It's disruptive.
Be disruptive.
If we would stand in the middle of the road and say who's got the best deal, things would change. But sometimes we are loyal to people who are not loyal to us. Okay? So as we go forward into the 21st century, the rapidity through which we are moving into the 21st century is the catalyst that made me write the book. I never wrote the book because I need to write another book. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do this. I got stuff to do at home. I got people waiting at me at home. I don't need to do this. But when I sat with the black economists and white economists and the forecast for black America came back to read that by 2050, the median income for black Americans would be zero. Because of technology, because of the loss of jobs, because of our unpreparedness for the pace with which we are moving through a paradigm shift into a completely unimaginable world, not just by 2050, but over the next 5 to 10 years, I don't think you'll even be able to recognize how things are done in this country because of the speed of artificial intelligence and technology and all the devices that are coming up and all the ways that we used to make money are being challenged. If we don't adapt, and we are an adaptable species, that's why we have withstood for ages, because we have been an adaptable species from the dry Saharan desert to the Eskimos in Alaska. We have adapted to whatever climate we were in, from slavery, from freedom to slavery, from colonialism and back and forth, from the apartheid back and forth. The one thing we have always done is survive. Mm-hmm. And yes, we've always survived. And if we're going to continue to survive, we have to notice that everything is racing towards something. And COVID sped it up because the technological gains that would have taken 10 years had to happen in 2 to sustain the economy. Dr. King said that when black people have an economic travesty, I'm paraphrasing it, it is a social problem. When white people have an economic problem, it is a depression. That was true then and it's true now. When black people have a drug problem, it's a crime. When white people have a drug problem, it's a sickness. So my son goes to jail, your son goes to therapy. Okay, so all of these inequities are baked into the way we see the world. I'm trying to get us to wake up and say, we have to create the jobs we want to have. Every 5th black person in this world works for a black business. You must understand.
1 in 5. Okay.
1 in 5. Mm-hmm. 1 in 5 works for a black business. Most black businesses only have 2 people working for them. If we would hire one more black person or one more person in our business, we would exponentially affect the economy just because we're getting into our head the ability to own. And we've gone from doing business to thinking business. We can't get to think the business. How can I grow it? How can I multiply it? How can I franchise it? How can I get better delivery? How can I go global with it? Because we're so busy doing it. When you make your living with your own 2 hands, you've limited your living by your 2 hands. You've only got 2. So you can only do one head at a time. You can only do one tax return at a time. You can only do one landscape scene at a time. You can only make one dress at a time. Anytime you can only do one at a time, you have greatly diminished your ability to scale up your business. So we started Good Soil as an endeavor I got some good soul people in the house because we are training our entrepreneurs how to scale up their business, how to access capital, how to grow their business, how to stop doing it and start thinking it. I am a limited resource and yet a vital resource. And I have to ask myself, am I being used for my highest and best use? I started out playing the piano in the church. I started out directing the choir, but that was not my highest and best use. And so sometimes you can be talented in an area that you were not created to do. Enjoy the talent, but move toward the things where you have the greatest impact. Not effort, but impact. Effort is how much I expended. Impact is how much I change things. In order to have impact, you have to be able to have some metric system that you monitor to determine, is it working? I know you've been doing it for 3 generations, but is it working? If it's not working, it's time to disrupt it. If it's not working, you must disrupt it until you get to the point that you are fruitful. Because right now, we have more seeds than we have fruit. That shouldn't be that way. You should end up with more fruit than you have seeds. But we have too many people becoming and nobody's there. So until we start disrupting the way we think, can I say one more thing?
Come on.
The reason we think the way we do is because we couldn't get hired, so we had to get hustled. So we became hustlers. We hustle, whether we hustle drugs, hustle dope, hustle clothing. People come to New York, buy stuff, go other places, sell it all the time. We hustle. It's hard for me to explain what my dad did because he was a hustler. He did everything. He sold pots and pans and curtains and draperies, and we got fresh fish came in on the train, and we sold fresh fish, and he started a janitor. He did everything. He had to do everything to end up with anything. So we learned hustling. So even when we become entrepreneurs, we hustle. The problem with hustling, we're hustling in an inflation. So the inflation is making the hamster have to go faster and faster and faster and faster and faster just to live the way he did 10 years ago. Because it's only you and your cousin Nellie working, okay? Instead of backing away from the business, hiring somebody to do what you used to do and staring at the environment in which you are doing business at and determining where do I need to throw the net, Peter, to bring in the great drought of fishes. Yeah, because you can be close to it and still be missing it. And I wrote this book because there's so many deals I've done down through the years that people didn't pay any attention to. Whenever they saw a movie, they thought the church was doing movies. They said, what's the preacher doing movies? The church is doing movies. The church don't know nothing about the movie. They don't even hear about it till you hear about it. My company was doing the movies. My company was signing the contract. My company entered into a deal with Amazon. My company ended into a deal with Rock Nation. My company has ended up with a deal with Sony Pictures. My company did it. You saw the movie and then wondered where he got the money from. You actually get paid for that. If you produce a movie, you actually get paid for that. And I still could go home and preach on Sunday morning. So to think that this is about tithes and offerings, no, it's about creativity. And there are seeds of creativity down in all of you that could turn into finances and resources if you were put in the right environment and exposed. So we started doing Good Soil and the Good Soil movement to take our talented people through training and networking so that they can become more proficient at being productive. Since God said the first thing he said to man is be productive, then I don't have to pray and ask you, Lord, if it be your will, I don't want nothing that you don't want me to have. But I thought I'd come to you and pray, kind sir, that if it pleases you, I don't want to be high-minded, but oh Lord, could I have a little fruit?
All right, wait. I feel my help coming on. You know we're running out of time, right?
Yeah.
Your book talks about disruptive partnerships. I would say that your partnership with Wells Fargo is disruptive. It's a $1 billion package. I watched your interview, and you've got some wonderful things in mind that you want to achieve with that partnership. But Wells Fargo has a history of discriminating against people of color.
Absolutely.
So explain the disruptive partnership that you have.
First of all, Wells Fargo approached me 15 years ago to do something with them. And I walked away because they were right at the height of the debauchery and the predatory lending with which they were handling people of color. And I wasn't going to be a party to it, and I walked away. So I remain a person who can always walk away. You cannot negotiate if you cannot walk away.
Yep.
Anytime you walk into a deal you gotta have, you just gotta pay for it because you can't negotiate it if you can't walk away from it. So I could walk away. I walked away before. But now with new administration, a bad past to clean up, and a sweep of most of the former leadership of the past regime, and after several meetings and after doing due diligence, I thought it was possible in this climate to do a mutually beneficial deal. They need to clean up their act and get their act together. I need to have more capital resources to build back our communities. So guess what? So there's $1 billion of OPM.
I hear you.
Okay.
Other people's.
Yeah. that at least made it into our community, irrespective to what happens to Wells Fargo. But the truth of the matter is, I still wouldn't have done it if I hadn't sat with Charlie for quite some time. And as I sat with him and talked with him and met his leadership and met his team, I thought it was safe. Does that mean that Wells Fargo, Charlie Scharf is the CEO for Wells Fargo. It doesn't mean that they might not make mistakes. Bank of America makes mistakes. JP Morgan, everybody makes mistakes. And then once you get in the doghouse in our society, it's hard to get out.
So it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah,
because to partner with someone like you helps to change their narrative in relationship to the community of color.
Yes.
Now, if that translates into $1 billion, I'll partner with them.
Yeah. It translates into $1 billion, but it also translates into a relationship where I can have influence into the way they handle us. You understand what I'm saying?
See, that's important, because too often you would be criticized. I've been criticized for this kind of thing, for going into the belly of the beast, developing these relationships so that we can sanctify that context, and then have our communities benefit from that.
You can't change anything from the outside. You have to get in it to change it. You got to get in it to change it, and just follow the money. If they've got an investment in me, they're going to hear what I got to say. So I get to say things in a room, not in the press release. I get to get in the room and have a conversation and say, what are you doing? What are the metrics? How far along are you? What have you done? What are you going to do? How are we doing on the mortgages? How are we doing on the so and so and so and so? How do we do such a thing? Because all of a sudden we have relationship, okay? And those relationships can be productive. And if they get where they're not productive, I will be gone. See,
that's important. I've always had the philosophy, I never sit down to a deal that I can't walk away from.
Absolutely.
Because that means the deal has me.
Right.
And that deal is going to turn me every which way but loose, if I can use that phrase. So I make sure that if I have to get up and walk away, that's how we got our property. I walked away from the deal when they tried to switch it up on me. And they said, Reverend, where are you going? I said, I'm done. You know, you're trying to change this around. Wait, let me make a call. You know, they made a call it didn't make and came back and said all of a sudden they can cooperate. But that's very, very important, because if we don't get inside, Bishop, and effect change, we can stand on the sidelines and criticize and scream and holler. Nothing is going to change. But you also develop the reputation, the experience, the consistency. You develop the brand so that you can walk into those spaces.
I had no idea how many spaces that I could walk in. I was like shocked. I thought, well, I mean, the last few years, I was at a dinner with Sally Quinn, who was one of the editors for On Faith at the Washington Post. Lives in a house that was built by Abraham Lincoln in Washington, D.C., had a very prestigious dinner for me, invited a host of people. Michael, Eric Dyson would be a name you know, but she also invited some rabbis, some Jews, some Catholic people, Bob Schaefer, the journalist. And we're sitting up having dinner, just about maybe 20 people around her table, and I made some crack. I was probably maybe late 40s, headed to 50 then. I said, I'm getting old. And Bob Schaefer looked at me and said, don't you ever say that again. I said, what do you mean? He said, number one, you're not old. And he said, number two, everything important in my life happened after 65. I said, just like you did. I said, what? It had never occurred to me, because black people don't think like that. We think once we get a certain age, we should be sitting over in the corner, eating sweet potato pie, and somebody come get your plate for you when it's over. We don't think like we should run for president at 70-something. You don't see none of us 78 years old talking about I can run the country. Okay, we're trying to remember our name. Bob Schaefer says to me, everything important to me happened after 65. Young people need to hear this. If it didn't happen in your 30s, if it didn't happen in your 40s, Even if it didn't happen in your 50s, doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am doing things now in the business world that I could not have done in my 30s.
That's right.
I had not earned my stripes. I had not learned the language outside the church to sit at a boardroom and have a conversation about CDFIs, about 501c3s, about understanding the nuances of various types of real estate collaborations and how complicated those deals are. I now understand that, but it took this. It took this. I couldn't have done it with my curl. I couldn't have done it with my fro.
I saw that picture.
Did you see that picture?
I saw that picture.
Don't hold it against me. It's not a very good one. But I'm saying that big deals take time. Destiny takes time. Don't be discouraged if you didn't get it when you imagined it. Make sure that you're getting everything out of where you are at the stage you're at. And if you're not seeing movement, disrupt it if it doesn't work. Disrupt it.
The name of the book, Disruptive Thinking. The author, Bishop T.D. Jakes. We are out of time, but not out of conversation. I don't know what we're going to do with that, but it's been a pleasure.
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure, Bishop.
Thank you so much.
Bishop T.D. Jakes, y'all.
Did you enjoy the conversation? Come on, I don't know about you, but I think this should happen more than just tonight. I see a television show, I see a lot of things. Thank you for coming, and make sure you get the book. Have a great night. Good night.